Okay, so today we are going to talk about the president or the leaders during the Great Depression, which is Herbert Hoover, who was the president during the start of the Great Depression. So Hoover struggles with the Depression. The timeline, here's how it works. So Hoover easily got elected in the election of 1928 under Republican leadership. So the president before was Calvin Coolidge. He was a Republican. Life in the 1920s was awesome. It was great. Flappers, economy's booming, prosperity, life is good. So why not elect another Republican president? So in 1928, Hoover easily won the presidency. Because under Republican leadership, life was good in the 1920s. So they thought it's going to continue in the 1930s. However, everything changed after the stock market crash of October 29, 1929. Herbert Hoover didn't cause the depression. He just happened to be the president that was in charge when it happened. So he didn't cause it. He was just in charge when it happened. So Hoover's reaction to the stock market crash. So how did he react to like this economic disaster? So Hoover believed the economy would fix itself. The economies, governments, the country naturally goes through ups and downs. That means that in some periods the economy is really good, everybody's working, everybody has a job. In other times the economy slows down, people are losing their jobs, people don't have enough saved. So it naturally happens, and that happens in everywhere, and it's always happened in governments. So he didn't think that it was such a big deal. He believed that the economy would eventually fix itself. So he did not believe that no drastic measures were needed to be taken by the government. So it's not completely his fault because nobody could have seen how damaging the Great Depression was. We have never experienced a depression as bad as it was in the 1930s. So he thought naturally, yeah, our economy goes up and down, it'll eventually fix itself. So he had no idea how severe it was. His philosophy of government, he had two philosophies of government. Hoover did not believe that the federal government should be giving its citizens direct relief, or in other words, money from the government. So he believed that Americans naturally want to work for their money. They want to work, they want to contribute, they want to better themselves. They don't just want a handout. So he didn't think that it was the government's job to just give people money. He himself came from a poor background, and through hard work and dedication and by working hard, he lifted himself up to be president. And he believed that all Americans were just like that. If you work hard enough, you'll eventually reach where you want to be. So he didn't believe that the government should just be giving out handouts. It should not be giving direct relief. People will eventually bounce back. This political cartoon kind of shows his mentality. It says, "Trust me, prosperity is just around the corner." That's Herbert Hoover. Well, maybe not this corner. And in the background, we see a man falling from a skyscraper, which was a thing back in the 1930s, saying, "I am ruined," after the stock market crash. And this was his philosophy. Eventually, yes, things suck right now, but eventually things will get better. His second philosophy is voluntary cooperation. He believed that the chief function of the government was to encourage. It wasn't to help maintain or to support, but to encourage people to help others. So voluntary cooperations. People should want to help if they're good Christian Americans that want to help out. People should want to help, but they shouldn't be forced to help just because the government is telling them to do so. So he believed in voluntary cooperation. And we see this in many wealthy patrons setting up soup lines and kind of donating clothes and bread lines and giving out jobs and money and food. A lot of wealthy people did this during the Depression. So he encouraged that voluntary cooperation. But the government should not force you to give. It should be voluntary. It should be voluntary, not forced. So he believed in voluntary cooperation. The economic situation in the 1930s. So he was president during the worst economic time ever. Unemployment continued to rise. Remember, it was 1 out of 4 people were out of a job. Unemployment was at a level that was never before. And soup kitchens also, and Hoovervilles and hobos became a common thing. Hooverville is kind of like when people started to lose their homes, they were forced to live in the streets like hobos. They started to form little towns in the street, similar to what we see in various areas of LA, especially by the 10th freeway. Where a lot of communities and a lot of people, you see a lot of tents and a lot of hobos community there. They used to nickname those communities Hoovervilles or shanty towns as kind of like a taunt to the president, saying, this is a Hooverville, this is what the president has caused me. So he was blamed for the depression, even though he did not cause it. So the economy was getting worse. To make matters even worse for Hoover, the bonus army incident. So what happened was, veterans from World War One, they fought in World War One, and they were promised a payment, a bonus. Hey, thank you for serving our country in World War One. We're gonna give you some money that's gonna be paid out over the next couple of years. But because a depression happened, that means that the servicemen, the veterans, wanted and needed their money now. They couldn't wait 10 years for their payment. They needed their money now. So what they did is that they decided to march to the Capitol and demand their bonus. That's why they're called the bonus army. They were part of the army during World War One, and they demanded their bonus for their service. Unfortunately, we're in the Depression. There's no money to give them. So just because you're asking for them doesn't mean that we have it. So they weren't given that money, and they refused to leave. They just ended up setting up camp, their shanty towns, their Hoovervilles, right in front of the Capitol. And if you're the president, you can't have a bunch of homeless people and hobo-looking people in front of your Capitol, because it looks bad to the rest of the world. So it just made the president look really, really bad. All these veterans camped out right in front of the Capitol. So what he decided to do is that Hoover ordered the army to tear gas them and forcibly remove them. Things got out of hand, where a lot of veterans got hurt and some of them killed. But it was so it looked really, really bad for Hoover. He just wanted to remove them, but it ended up being like this whole huge thing where veterans, people that served their country, were ending up getting hurt. The public was super, super pissed off. They were outraged for what happened to these veterans. The president turned the army on its own vets, on its own people. So this made Hoover look really, really bad. That wasn't his intention. His intention was just to remove them. We don't have the money, go home. But they wouldn't leave. So, but because of how it looked, it made Hoover look really, really bad. Eventually, nearing the end of his presidency, Hoover responded to the economic crisis. He finally understood, okay, we've never been in this situation before. I thought it was just like a normal recession where the economy is a bear market, where the economy is really slow and it really sucks. But we've never seen anything like this. So let me start like taking it more seriously and doing something, switching on my policies to make it better. So Hoover finally allowed federal money into public works projects. What are public works projects? They're basically jobs created by the government to get people or the public back to work. Some of the projects that they did were Boulder Dam, also nicknamed Hoover Dam. If you guys have ever seen the movie Transformers, you know when all the heads of the army kind of meet inside of a dam where Optimus Prime is kind of sliding off of. That is Hoover Dam. So that was a project that was created as a public works project under Hoover to jumpstart the economy. Unfortunately, it was too little too late. So this creating of jobs and building Hoover Dam, it was just a little too late. The economy, we were on a full-on depression at this point. And therefore, Hoover's political situation was damaged. So after 4 years of being president, what comes around again every 4 years? We have the presidential election. In this presidential election, we have Herbert Hoover running for the Republicans and Franklin D. Roosevelt running for the Democrats. The failing economy, the bonus army incident, the Great Depression, all these different little things damaged Hoover's public image to a point where there was no return. Therefore, the people elected the Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, as president in 1932. In this political cartoon, we have, that you guys analyzed before, we have Herbert Hoover handing over the baby, or in this case, America, to the new president. And if you see, the baby's crying because of all these little bubbles around, which is what Hoover is now handing over to the new president. And this is Hoover's reaction to the Great Depression.